right, guys, welcome to this short interview. I finally was able to get Donald Trump, so he'll be on the show. He's so busy, he won't even read his own wife's book, but he made time, so he's here. So we'll have him on real quick and see what he has to say about what's going on in politics today. But finally, you'll have the two most hated people in the universe on the same platform, me of course being number one and him being the second. Let's start it up. And yeah, again, thanks for being here, guys. As always, it's cool to have you. All right, so I want to welcome you, Mr. Trump, on the show. We won't shake hands, not to be insulting. I know that you don't particularly like it, and shaking my hand is a little bit like grabbing a wet towel that's been in swamp water, so we won't do that. So yeah, how do you feel so far?
It's good to be here. I appreciate the gesture, but you could have been a little bit better in doing my introduction. I was a little sloppy.
You're right. I should have done a better job, and I should have followed in the footsteps of PBD when he said that you were really good at three things. He talked about you're good in business, or at least gave the impression of being good in business. Then you were good in Hollywood, and number three, you managed to do well and become president of the United States. However, recently I feel like your interviews or your rallies have become a little bit ethically, morally, and emotionally bankrupt, and just don't really like this new you.
Here we go again with the radical left loonies and their witch hunt. You remind me of little Marco Rubio and mini Mike Bloomberg. You're weak if you can't handle a little fear-mongering.
When it comes to speeches, I always admired your storytelling, and nobody quite delivers lines like you do. However, they've become like really dark, these rallies of yours. So sometimes I find myself skipping forward and avoiding all the starkness. It's like you're the BFG, but the BUG, big unfriendly giant. Kind of unbecoming.
My rallies are the biggest and best rallies there's ever been, and you can't even get 3,000 people to subscribe to your stupid YouTube channel.
Wow, Mr. President, that's a big compliment coming from you, since you said you didn't really have a chance to read your own wife's book, but you took the time to see how many subscribers I have. Thank you. That's pretty cool.
That was not a compliment, and you know it. What I meant to say was, you look so small, you make Tom Cruise look like a giant.
So I read that Melania doesn't share your views on abortion. How do you plan to fix that?
There's nothing to fix, and it won't matter, because if I win, I will take away her right to vote.
I just wonder how you would feel if the shoe was on the other foot. If women had a chip in your brain that would stop your banana from going up. What would you do then?
This is the plutocracy. What are you talking about? Men lead, women follow. We have more purchasing power. Elon Musk, who's a respected guy, is helping me buy all the votes I need to win.
Well, how do you feel about Project Warp Speed, where so many people got injected with genetically modified microorganisms? And a lot of your voters are really not happy about that.
I don't talk about it, but Project Warp Speed was a great success. Nobody else could have done it.
So what about the alternatives like hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin? What about those?
They were pretty good, but the radical left wouldn't let me promote them. Nobody could have done Project Warp Speed like I did it. Half the time, half the budget. And when I took my shot, it was like a miracle. I felt 10 years younger.
What about the border? Do you think you've got this under control? Do you think it's going to help you win the election?
The reason of stop campaigning is because we have this in the bag. Thanks to Elon Musk, Tren de Aragua, and Gaston Newsom, we're gonna win this election. Thanks to the radical left and open borders, I have all the voters I need. We're gonna flip every blue state that doesn't have voter ID. It's gonna be a beautiful thing.
What are your thoughts on insulting so many different people in America? Especially recently you did something with the Haitians in Springfield, and what was it? You went and you completely insulted Detroit. What are your thoughts on that?
Unlike Lion Kamabla, I just go on stage and start talking. Who needs a teleprompter when I've done more for the African Americans than anyone else in the history of our country?
That's really interesting. Could you please expand of what you've done for those communities?
I used to have Oprah Winfrey at Mar-a-Lago all the time, and she loved me. And Whoopi Goldberg, yeah, I hired her. She was a potty mouth like you wouldn't believe. Mark Robinson and I are real tight, and I'm saving Detroit and the car industry. Has anybody heard a more beautiful word than tariffs?
But Mr. President, when you put tariffs on other countries like you did with DJI, we end up spending more for our drones.
That's okay. By the time I'm president, my voters will finally figure it out.
From the moment you started limping for the presidency and came down the escalator, fake news have been treating you pretty poorly, but how come you don't retaliate, even though you have Truth Social and stuff like that? You don't seem to be very proactive in attacking them.
I have a hard time doing it to them because basically I am a truthful person.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, Jesus, is that true? Did that actually happen?
Do you plan on going through with the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on seniors' health care?
No, I probably shouldn't say this, but I used to hate giving overtime. Big business, if you're listening, good news, you're all getting tax breaks.
So what's your plan on ending the wars? I mean, what's been going on in Gaza and Ukraine is absolutely horrific.
It should have never happened, and if I'd been president, it wouldn't have happened. It's all Biden's fault, but I will finish it. I will finish it.
What's your timeline on that, and what do you plan to do with the Middle East?
As president-elect, I will end both wars. It'll take 2 phone calls. I will return Russia's stolen land to my best buddy Putin. What a guy! He's a guy that I used to check out in the locker room with my other friends, Viktor Orban, Epstein. We all agreed that he was all man. And what a man!
I think you got him confused with David Batista, Danny Trejo Machete, and Vinny the Vegan Vampire.
What's the difference? They're all foreigners, like Tren de Aragua.
You're a funny guy, Mr. President. Credit where credit is due, but you're a horrible judge of character.
Stop waving that long nose of yours, Pinocchio. It reminds me of fake news. It's so distracting. Be still, and shave off that unibrow. Be more like The Rock.
Are you willing to take back what you said about the Jews being the cause of you losing the election?
As president-elect, the war on Gaza ends. There's nothing left to blow up anyway. Nobody did more for the Jews and the Middle East than I did. I gave the Jews the embassy they always wanted, and the Abraham Accords were a masterpiece. When I'm done bombing from Gaza all the way to Turkey to take the oil and drill, baby, drill, it's gonna be so peaceful. So peaceful. Ghosts.
I see what you did there. You did the weave. That's so cool.
Thought you might like that. That's like my signature move.
I knew you were the most famous long con man in the history of the world, but seeing it in person, it hits different.
You love that? You'll love my projection and confession. I cross every T and dot every I better than a pirate.
Heard you were good at slashing prices and doing the war face. Show me your war face.
Ah!
I was weak, Mr. President. That didn't convince me. Do it again.
Ah!
Okay, that was a little too much. Calm down.
I know, right? I should get an Oscars for that one.
So do you plan to declassify UFOs, UAPs, and hidden governmental technology over Unity, zero-point energy, cold fusion, and a bunch of technologies we've had for like 50 years, but the government doesn't allow us to use?
If I told you that, SEAL Team 6 would come to your house and blow you to smithereens.
Oh, so that's why you won't talk about UFO Victor, and you make fun of all the new technologies like hydrogen.
I can't say it, but you said it. You said it.
It was a pleasure having you on the show, Donald, and I hope you had a good time yourself, and maybe we'll see you again in future.
I gotta say, you treated me pretty well, and there was no need for a subpoena to come on the show. Your questions were quite unusual, but very fair and on point. The other reporters, like on 60 Minutes, should learn from you. They're very bad.
I'm so glad you had a good time, and as a parting gift, I'm going to give you this microphone. I know that recently you've been having trouble with yours on stage.
Thanks, that's great. And now I won't have problems like I usually do.
All right, before we end the show, I would give you a fist bump, but I know that your bones are weak, so they shatter. We're not going to do the elbow thing because that's the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard. So
don't you get me started on woke elbow bumps.
So why don't we just do an old-fashioned arm shake? Although I'm not voting for you because I believe in women's rights, thanks for stopping by and take care.
Bye. That's okay. That's all right. I already have all the votes I need. Bribe force! Bribe force! Bribe force!
Likey